The original Fast and the Furious made $207 million on a $38 million budget. Vin Diesel turned down the sequel. The original director also walked, and the studio handed a $76 million franchise continuation to the youngest Best Director nominee in Oscar history. That was Too Fast, Too Furious, a film made without its original star, its original director, and much of its original identity that somehow helped launch a franchise now worth over $7 billion. Today, 15 facts about Too Fast, Too Furious. From the reason Vin Diesel didn't come back, to the real street racers recruited as extras, to the cameo that quietly set up the entire franchise's future. Stick around for the bonus. Fact 1. Vin Diesel walked away, and Universal had to rebuild around the supporting role. After The Fast and the Furious became an unexpected blockbuster in 2001, Universal moved quickly on a sequel. Diesel was the obvious centerpiece. He turned it down. The official reason was scheduling. Diesel had committed to XXX. The less official version, widely reported at the time, was dissatisfaction with the script and a desire for creative control the studio wasn't prepared to grant. Universal had to build a sequel around Paul Walker's Brian O'Connor, originally written as the straight man to Diesel's Dominic Toretto. What looked like a casting crisis in 2002 would prove to be the moment the franchise learned how to function without a single indispensable star. Fact 2. John Singleton relocated the entire film to Miami. Rob Cohen had built the visual language of the first film, the extreme low-angle shots, the POV cameras, the hyper-stylized speed sequences. He stepped away from the sequel. The studio hired John Singleton, who at 24 had become the youngest director ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Director and the first black director nominated in that category for Boys in the Hood. Singleton replaced Los Angeles's industrial grays with Miami's pastel waterfront. The film looked different because the director was different, and Singleton made no attempt to replicate what had come before. Fact 3. Tyrese Gibson was cast largely through his existing relationship with the director. Roman Pierce needed to hold the screen alongside Walker without disappearing beside him. The studio landed on Tyrese Gibson, whose major acting experience was limited to Singleton's Baby Boy from 2001. That existing relationship with the director was part of what secured him the role. What Gibson brought was rawer than any resume suggested, a loose, improvisational quality that became one of the film's defining characteristics. The antagonistic chemistry between Roman and Brian was largely unscripted in its texture, built from Gibson and Walker finding a rhythm during production. Roman Pierce has appeared in every main franchise entry since. The gamble became one of the series' most durable investments. Fact 4. Real Miami street racers were recruited as extras and consultants. The production worked with actual Miami street racing communities to populate the racing scenes. Racers who ran illegal events through the city's industrial areas were brought in as extras, consultants, and drivers in the background of sequences. Their cars were real, modified for street performance, not Hollywood stunt work. The opening race carries an authenticity that is partly explained by the fact that many of the people in it genuinely do this on weekends. The line between participant and extra was deliberately blurred. Fact 5. The car choices became character shorthand in a way the franchise would build on for decades. The first film built its identity around Japanese imports. The sequel used vehicle choices as personality statements. Roman's garish, attention-grabbing cars against Brian's stripped-down racers, the pink Eclipse that Monica drives, Suki's Honda S2000. No dialogue required. The franchise's later practice of using each character's car as an extension of who they are, a visual language that became a franchise trademark, was developed significantly here. By Fast 5, cars had become as central to character identity as any costume choice. That language was being written in Miami in 2002. Fact 6. Eva Mendes worked with Singleton to give her character genuine agency. Eva Mendes was brought in as Monica Fuentes, the undercover customs agent inside the villain's operation. Early drafts had written the role as a relatively conventional informant. Singleton worked with her to develop Monica as someone who has made calculated, strategic choices about where she is and carries real risk in that position. The version of the character in the film has considerably more dimension than those early drafts suggested. Monica Fuentes was brought back in the post-credits scene of Fast 5, a piece of franchise continuity that rewarded viewers who remembered her from 8 years earlier. Fact 7. Cole Hauser played the villain as cold rather than entertaining. Carter Verone was designed as a specific kind of threat, not a physical antagonist who could match the protagonists, but a criminal operator whose danger came from wealth, organizational control, and the violence he could deploy through others. Hauser had spent much of his early career in exactly that register of menace, controlled, understated, capable of sudden brutality. The script never tries to make Verone appealing. He is simply dangerous. In an era when action film villains were often required to be charismatic, that restraint was an unusual and effective choice. Fact 8. The yacht stunt was accomplished practically on a real waterfront location. The film's climax, Brian and Roman's cars launched from a ramp onto a moving yacht, was filmed on an actual Miami waterfront property. The stunt required precise coordination between ramp angle, boat position, and launch timing. Several attempts were needed, and visual effects supplemented the result, but the fundamental image was achieved practically. It became one of the franchise's defining stunt moments and established the template for the increasingly elaborate practical sequences that followed. Cars launched from planes, driven off cliffs, eventually sent to space. The yacht jump in 2003 was the prototype for an escalation that still hasn't stopped. No Vin Diesel, a new director, a co-lead with almost no acting experience, a yacht stunt that set the template for everything that came after. We're not halfway through. Still coming. The supporting character who outlasted everyone else in the franchise. The real reason the production chose Miami. And the bonus, 30 seconds of footage at the end of the film that almost nobody took seriously in 2003 and what it was actually setting up. Fact 9. Ludacris was cast in a role that became one of the franchise's most important long-term assets. Ludacris was cast as Tej Parker, a Miami garage owner who helps Brian and Roman navigate the underground scene. The role was supporting, someone who provides resources, appears in 2 acts, and recedes. Ludacris was primarily known as a rapper, not an actor. Studio expectations for the character were limited. Tej returned in Fast 5 in 2011 and has appeared in every main entry since, evolving from garage owner to tech specialist to someone who flies aircraft and operates satellites. The character's arc across nearly 2 decades is one of the franchise's most unlikely success stories, a minor role in a dismissed sequel that became one of the series' most durable presences. Fact 10. Devin Aoki learned performance driving for the role. Suki was written to diversify the racing world the film depicted. Devin Aoki, primarily known as a model, spent time with the stunt team developing the driving skills needed for her sequences. The pink Honda S2000 she drives became one of the most recognizable vehicles in franchise history and was widely merchandised. Aoki didn't return for subsequent entries, but Suki's car has been cited by fans for 20 years as one of the series' most iconic images. Fact 11. Shooting entirely on location in Miami created significant practical problems. Rather than using Los Angeles for interiors, the production based itself entirely in Miami. Real street racers showed up at filming locations. The heat created cooling problems for the modified vehicles. Several cars broke down during shooting, adding time to the schedule. The authentic atmosphere came at genuine operational cost, but it also produced something that mattered long-term, a visual identity entirely distinct from the first film. The Miami of Too Fast, Too Furious, the pastel architecture, the water, the heat, became as much a part of the film's personality as the cars. Fact 12. Paul Walker performed much of his own driving throughout production. Walker had developed genuine driving skill during the first film and arrived at the sequel with abilities that went beyond what most actors bring to vehicle-based productions. He performed a substantial portion of his own driving in sequences that didn't require the most precise stunt work. His actual comfort behind the wheel communicated itself on screen. That authenticity, the fact that Walker was genuinely, not performatively, a car person, was one of the franchise's most consistent assets across his entire run in the series. Fact 13. The film introduced the 2 characters who would define the franchise's future. Too Fast, Too Furious earned $236 million worldwide against a $76 million budget. Rotten Tomatoes scored it at 36%. Critics pointed to thin characterization, a generic villain, and a plot that existed primarily to connect car sequences. What critics couldn't assess in 2003 was the long-term function of the film within a franchise. Roman Pierce and Tej Parker, both introduced here, became central figures across the following 20 years. Judged as a standalone film, it is a functional summer blockbuster. Judged as franchise architecture, it was quietly essential. Fact 14. John Singleton clashed with the studio over tone and never returned. Singleton came to the project with ambitions that extended beyond what Universal's marketing department required. He was interested in Miami's cultural complexity, the intersection of racing culture with the city's Caribbean and Latin American communities. The studio had paid for a broad commercial car film. The tension between Singleton's instincts and the franchise's requirements is visible in the final product. Moments of genuine character texture, alongside sequences that exist purely for spectacle. spectacle. Singleton never returned to the franchise. He remains the most artistically credentialed director the series ever employed. Fact 15. The ensemble model that defines the franchise was invented here under necessity. The Fast and the Furious worked as a two-hander. Too Fast, Too Furious, forced by Diesel's absence, introduced the franchise's defining structural logic. A team, Brian and Roman, Tej, Suki, Monica. Multiple characters with distinct skills and personalities contributing different energies to the same objective. The ensemble approach that reaches its fullest expression in Fast 5, when characters from across the franchise's history are assembled together for the first time, was prototyped here under necessity rather than design. The sequel that looked like a compromise was actually the blueprint. And now, the bonus I've been saving for last. In the film's final minutes, as the credits begin to roll, there is a brief additional scene. A car pulls up. A figure steps out. Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel, appears for approximately 30 seconds, exchanges a wordless look with Brian O'Connor, and drives away. The cameo was shot separately from the main production. Diesel agreed to appear briefly as a gesture of continuity, a signal that Toretto still existed, that the story wasn't finished. Most audiences in 2003 read it as a nice touch, an acknowledgement of what had been missing, what it actually was, a promise. When Fast and Furious arrived in 2009, with both Diesel and Walker reunited for the first time since the original, the foundation for that reunion had been quietly laid in 30 seconds that most people barely registered. The cameo nobody took seriously set up the franchise that nobody saw coming.